And welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 234. Today, the Capturing Movement Challenge. So 2 weeks ago, I talked about how to capture movement, which is essentially in photography, capturing four-dimensional activity in 2 dimensions, and set a challenge. So we've had, 8 or 9 people or so send in images, so we're going to be looking at that today. So stick around. Yes, so welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. Yes, capturing movement is what it's all about today. Not always necessarily an easy thing to do. Meanwhile, we are here live on YouTube. If you happen to be watching live, then leave a comment. Let me know you're here. Tell me what you're up to. Tell me what the weather's doing. We can get the chat started. I see we've got a couple in already. April says, greetings from a sunny Long Island, New York. Happy spring. Jeffrey, I think it is, says, greetings from sunny but cool South Shore area, Massachusetts. Nick says, hello from an overcast Bath. That's down in the West Country in England. Susan says, hi from Kakubri, where it's been bright and sunny, but the sun disappeared about 10 minutes ago. Yeah, it was bright and sunny here, disappeared about 2 minutes ago. So obviously Kakubri slightly ahead of Castle Douglas here in the weather. And Nadia says, hi everyone from Fife. So we have people, we have images, we have a podcast to go. If you, don't forget to click like down below on the podcast as well. Maybe I should remind you this afterwards in case you don't actually like this podcast. Not that I can really imagine that would happen. But yes, please click like, do the subscribe, all the usual kind of stuff. So yes, what we're talking about today then is, actually, I tell you what, just before we get on to what we're talking about today, just let's do a quick Smug Points update. Because the Smug Points for March accumulated so far, and it's all going to change at any moment, well, certainly by the end of the podcast. Nadia and Viji are currently joint in first place with 40 points. Janet from Mississauga is in 35 points, second place, and Robert from Texas, 30 points in third place. So Smug Points will be handed out today. So everybody who enters any of my challenges gets an automatic 10 Smug Points for entering. If you are watching live and you leave a comment, you get an automatic 5 Smug Points. So if you are here live and you've left a comment, there's 15 Smug Points straight for you. But then what I will also be doing is I'll be choosing my top 3 at the end of the podcast, just before I tell you what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. And at that point, there's a bonus 30, 20 and 10 Smug Points to be won. So that will juggle up everything. And then finally, next week, I think we're doing a feedback one. So if you send in an image which I use to give feedback or critique on, there's a bonus 25 Smug Points to be had for that as well. So everything to play for the March Smug Points. Yes, because everybody else has basically got somewhere between 5 and 15. But because of what could change at the end of this one and what could change at the end of next one, there's still everything to play for. If you're still down on about 5 points, you don't write yourself off just yet. Oh, Marilyn's joined us from a very chilly Colorado, and Join says good day from mid-Ohio. Okay, excellent. So yes, what were we talking about? Movement. Movement is one of those things that is a strange thing when it comes to photography, because movement is something that happens in 3-dimensional space and 1-dimensional time. It happens through time. And yet we capture it on a flat surface that isn't moving. So we only have 2 dimensions to capture a 4-dimensional event. So trying to capture that, we have to use tricks and techniques to kind of hint at and imply the idea of movement, even when no movement is actually happening in a still image. So use of time in the way the camera captures time, whether it's smudging time through blur or whether it's freezing moments that we wouldn't normally see frozen, or it uses things like strong use of diagonals which imply a sense of energy and movement or anticipation of movement as well. These things all kind of come into it. So I set the challenge, if you're looking for any if you haven't actually entered this and you're looking for inspiration on this, I would go back 2 episodes. Go back to episode 232 and you'll find the entire podcast. It's all about this idea. It's also menu segmented as well, if there's bits you want to leap through to. So with that in mind, set the challenge, and like I said, we've had 8 or 9 people send in their images. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 9 in fact we have. So what we will do, Robert has joined us from a sunny spring morning in northern Texas. Okay, so there's definitely a sense of spring. I will say here actually today, it is quite cool. It's probably about 10, 11, maybe 12 degrees. Not sure it's as high as 12. But if you're in the shade, there's just this bitter there's still that bite of winter. But if you're in the sun, it's that little bit warmer, and it sort of caresses the skin. And then the daffodils are out, and there's crocuses are out, and some of the buds are starting to sort of hint about it on the trees. So yeah, it's definitely a sort of sense of spring nearby. And of course we're past the equinox as well now, so it will all be here in the northern hemisphere at least. Nights will be getting longer. Days will be getting longer. Nights will be getting shorter. Viji has joined us. Says good evening everyone from Chennai in India. Welcome Viji. So let's make a start then. So what we're going to start with in this idea of capturing movement is we're going to go to Nadia. So Nadia from Fife caught this one. She says, "This is my image for the movement challenge. We're out for a walk and I took my camera with me as it was a very blustery day and the sea was very choppy. I wanted to try and catch some sea spray. I managed to capture this one. The hit rate was about 1 in 30 just to achieve this one. I loved how it curved back in on itself as well." Yes, and of course that is one of those things about your hit rate as such. When you are trying to capture movement, it's a tricky thing to do. You have to pretty much anticipate ahead of time almost where the movement is going to be, because by the time you've noticed something and then your brain and you reacted and you've gone click, quite often that thing that you notice has passed. It's moved further to where the screen was. So if something is moving, you've either got to anticipate where it's going to be at the point you're going click, or in the case of this wave, so the wave crashes, if the spray goes up, it's really quite dramatic. But yes, I can imagine that by the time you notice it, you go click and most of it's disappeared. And then you think there's going to be one, so you get ready and you go click and then it doesn't develop. So yes, that idea of a hit rate of 1 in 30 doesn't surprise me in the slightest. In fact, you might be doing quite well with that kind of thing. But yes, it is rather lovely. So the waves, you've got this crash, but the wind is obviously kind of blowing it back on itself as well. So yeah, really quite dramatic. And a nice way of that notion of capturing time, which is what this podcast is all about, or capturing movement in time, because that's a moment that we recognise but we would never see. We couldn't linger on that moment because it moves, and then it's gone. But it's one of the wonderful things about photography is that ability to freeze time, freeze that moment, and to have every little droplet there just kind of frozen in space. It's kind of quite fun, that. So a nice start to that one. Thanks very much for sending that one in, Nadia. Good start. What have we got? Marilyn says beautiful. April says nice catch. Jeffrey says wonderful wave. Viji says, this is magnificent. And Susan says love the curvy wave and the different colours of the sea. John says great capture of the wave. And Viji says 3 different shades. What a beautiful colour palette. And that's true as well. When you're kind of going for the sea, you've kind of got that constant because the way the light is interacting with the water, as well as the fact that the spray itself tends to be much lighter and brighter, white, usually whitish. You get kind of rich tonal kind of palette there. Right, okay. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to Nick, and I was really quite intrigued with this one. Nick says, this is my entry in the movement challenge. It's a handheld photo of an escalator with a person riding on it. I like it because of the movement of the person turns to a streak of colour as they descend. Also, the escalator becomes just a strip, as if it was a conveyor belt, and then a little movement from me on the camera as well. And yes, there's definitely something about this. It's one of those kind of almost sort of strange things that... generally speaking, with the camera, what we're trying to do more than anything is avoid blur or avoid being out of focus, unless you are talking about that notion of capturing time, because most of its most of it, we can tell that, this is an escalator. We can tell, we've got the grid there. We've even got the don't take the shopping trolleys and don't do something with your kids there. The sign, which we can just about see. But it's this little smear over on the right here, which is rather lovely. I like that. It's a bit of a shame here, actually, that I seem to be in the way. Let me just hold on one moment. Let me just minimize that, close that, and bring that back up and do this. And then maybe what I can do is I can just sort of stretch this out a little bit so you can see it without my head in the way, because the bit that that really kind of captures this is this bit on the right here, and this is the person, as Nick says, is coming down the escalator, and you've got this wonderful sense of movement in it, and also you can sort of see where the steps are, but they've sort of moved as well. I really do like this one. It's got that sort of sense of movement and abstract, and we know there's somebody there, but we've got no idea what they look like. So yeah, lovely capture that, Nick. I really like that abstract nature of it. So yeah, great shot. Thanks for sending that one in, Nick. Right, now I need to go back here. What did we have? Nadia's saying thank you to everyone. April says, oh, I like the blur to this. John says, cool photo. And Viji says, we can actually see the movement. Oh, Meg's joined us, says, hi everyone, sorry I'm late. And Susan says, great capture of movement, Nick. Cool, right, okay, so next then we are going to go to Marilyn in Alberta, I think she was, for this one. So yes, this is, Marilyn says, attached is a photo of water movement. Alberta Falls is in the Rocky Mountain National Park and is very popular. For this shot, it was an early morning hike to get to the falls before it was crowded with people. It was also actually shot on film and recently scanned. So I don't have the technical details, but it was probably a shutter speed of 30 seconds or more. So yeah, well, that's kind of an interesting 30 seconds here, because there's daylight here as well. So I'm wondering, Marilyn, whether maybe you might have had an ND filter on it or something like that to have that amount of exposure in daylight. Generally speaking, we tend to overexpose a picture, but at the same time, by having a longer exposure, it does mean we have that lovely kind of silky movement of the water here, that the blur as it's going down, and it makes it a much softer, creamier kind of movement of water. Lovely colours there of the kind of autumn yellows and against the evergreens, and it's a nice movement of water coming down through the rocks. There's a lovely shape to this, I have to say. It really is. To be able to get that during the daytime, I think is a little bit special. So yeah, lovely photo that, Marilyn. Thanks very much for sending that in. So this is all kind of a really nice, these are interesting ways of capturing movement. From freezing the wave to smear on an escalator to movement of water through waterfalls in nature. Again, part of the love of doing these challenges is that everybody tends to come at it from a different angle and different way, and it can quite often inspire us to go out and try different things ourselves. What do we say here? Nick's saying thank you to everybody. Marilyn says yes, an ND filter. So for anybody who's never actually played with filters, you can get filter to screw onto the front of your lens, which is a bit like having sunglasses on, essentially. So neutral density means that it's not going to change the colour of your picture. I've known some people, for example, when they're really going for something incredibly bright, they'll actually use welder's glass. The thing is, with welder's glass is very often it's got a green tint to it as well, so it might block out a lot of light, but the light that does get through all tends to be very green. An ND filter, a neutral density filter, tends to not play around with your colours, but it is the equivalent of having sunglasses on, so it means there's a lot less light gets through. So if you're wanting to do a long exposure in the daylight, they're absolutely perfect for doing that. Certainly if you're ever going to be doing something like eclipse photography where you're pointing your camera at the sun, even if it's blocked by the moon, there's still a huge amount of light coming from it. So ND filters are a really good idea with that. What have we got here? Marilyn says, yes, looks like a pretty area. Nadia says, nice one, Marilyn. Susan says, beautiful autumn shot, Marilyn. Viji says, waterfalls, always a good subject for slow shutter speed, such glorious nature, great capture. Meg says, I really like the diagonals in the waterfall. Marilyn says, thank you. Viji says, the beauty is we could see the flow in different sizes. And Marilyn says, thanks, Meg, and all. And actually, I've just had a thought with that notion of the ND filter and the fact that it allows you to do slow shutter speed in daytime. This is something I've just suddenly wondered about for you, Viji. One of the things that Viji has often talked about in going to various places in India and some fantastic monuments and beautiful scenes and incredible architecture, but it's always absolutely packed solid full of people. Now, if you think about, like Nick's photo of the thing, when you sort of start slowing down the shutter speed, people become a blur. And if you slow it down enough, people can sort of disappear altogether. If you've got a 30-second exposure and you've got somebody walking across what would be, within 30 seconds, they're no longer there. They've not actually left much of a trail at all. And I have seen some extraordinary photos of like a city centre. What would you expect to be a busy city centre? But it's had something like a sort of 5-minute or a 10-minute exposure, long exposure, obviously on a tripod. And what happens is virtually all the people disappear. It looks like the place is empty, apart from, say, somebody who sat on the bench for the full 5 minutes. So maybe is one of these things to actually have a think about for you, Viji, is the idea, get yourself an ND filter. And then maybe what you do is you could go to a place, and again, you still maybe want to get a bit where it's not really bright middle of the day, but where there's less light, maybe just as the evening blue hour or golden hour, but the sun is sort of, you're in the shade of the buildings. And play around with something like that. You might find that that idea will sort of remove some of the people. Certainly I think it's worth playing with anyway. What else have we got here? Viji says the beauty is we could see the flow in different sizes. That's to do with how the water's coming down over the rocks. Or did I already say that one? And she also says, great tip, Kim. I will try this. We'll buy the filter. Yeah, take a look. Generally speaking, I think it's like you're looking for something like with a 10 stop, an ND100, is it? Google it, you'll find it out. You'll work it out. I have one somewhere, and suddenly my mind's gone blank on what they're actually, the full thing. But anyway, let's move on then. So next up then, we're going to go to John, and in complete contrast to that idea of a long exposure and creating something smooth and silky, John went for an 8,000th of a second exposure to try and capture this. So John says this photo was taken at a local fair, some kind of rodeo type thing, I think, here going on. Just something we don't get in Scotland. I've never seen a rodeo in Scotland. The only time I ever saw a rodeo live was when I was over in Canada and over in Alberta, I think, in fact. So a friend took me along to one, and it's quite amazing because here in Britain we just don't have them. So to see one live was quite amazing. Anyway, John goes on. It was an overcast day, overcast and late in the day. As such, the lighting was not good. As a result, it's a very grainy photo at an ISO setting of 6,400. F-stop was 2.8, shutter speed 1/8,000th. However, I think it is a good example of freezing movement. I was situated at the opposite end of the arena with 105 mil on the zoom. Not my best work, but I like the action. And I think this is one of those things where you're really up again. And yeah, there's no doubt about it. Unfortunately, the 6,400 ISO does mean the noise level is really incredible on it. But there is this thing here that, that in a way, to do it any less, if you'd done it at 1,000th of a second, perhaps you wouldn't really have been able to capture that level of detail. So there's always, and it's a difficult balance. And I think certainly something like a rodeo, something where it's really fast moving, you are up against it. Difficult to know without seeing the raw photo how much of that you might have been able to bring back. Some of the kind of, if you've got the raw into Photoshop, latest version of Photoshop, it's got quite astonishing noise reduction facilities. You might be able to bring back some of the detail. Not all of it, but however, having said that, the actual kind of point where you've frozen the moment, the woman here's got her legs absolutely displayed, just bouncing off the horse. We can see the legs frozen, we can see dirt flying up. There's fun there, definitely that sense of action, that frozen moment that you can't get in any other way than by using a camera. So fun shot that, John. Yes, thank you for sending that one in. April says, John, great shot, a lot of movement for sure. Viji says, so much fun, brings a smile. Susan says, well done for getting a difficult shot, John. April says, April's heading off now. Next week back to normal time. This is true, and I will try and remind you at the end of the thing, but next week clocks go forward here in the UK. So if you're in America and you're already that hour further ahead, time will equalise back to how it is for most of the rest of the year. And in India, Viji is going to shift, so I think suddenly yours is an hour earlier, possibly. I can never quite remember which way round it goes in India. If you're 5.5 hours difference at the moment, it will become 4.5 hours difference. And if you're 4.5 hours difference, it will become 5, whichever way round it is. Right, okay, so where are we at? Well, yeah, let's may as well, roughly halfway through the podcast. So a quick little reminder here that if you are enjoying these podcasts and you find them useful, entertaining, informative, whatever, and you would like to support them, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can do it. Of course, like I say, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like the video if you happen to still be enjoying it. We also have a couple of groups. We've got the Facebook group, and we have the Flickr group as well, where if you want to enter any of the challenges or put images in for feedback, or you want to ask questions, join the Flickr group or join the Facebook group, and those are places that you can do it. The advantage of the Flickr group, I think, is that whereas the Facebook group, you only essentially have one discussion thread and everything gets pushed down, Flickr allows us to have multiple discussion threads going at the same time, so we can be discussing Smug Points, and we can be just putting in images for latest posts, and we can ask questions without everything disappearing off the screen at the same time. Also, Flickr allows you to have up to 1,000 photos in your own personal portfolio at free level. If you want more than 1,000, well then you start paying for your pro level, but free entry, it's quite good like that. Right, okay, where are we? Viji says, yes, 7:30 p.m. in India. Right, okay, so where are we at then? So let's move on to next one. Yes. Suddenly gone. Where are we? Robert. Not that one. This one. Yes. Robert in Texas. Some of you may remember this. I just love this photo. I have to say, I love this photo. So Robert took this one a couple of years ago in Paris, outside the Modern Art Museum. It was blue hour, so it was a little dark and grainy. This is a skateboarder who just lost his board. It was heading to hit a woman and almost hit her. This was taken in a burst, so I have several expressions on his face. I've even thought about making a triptych composition. And this, I remember Robert put this one into cinematic challenge that we had. So he'd gone for this lovely cinematic crop. And it is just this movement and the expression on this guy's face. You think, oh, right, okay, so skateboard's shooting off, just about to hit somebody. And it's not, there's his movement, there's the anticipation of movement, there's the reaction to the movement of what the skateboard is about to do. That beautiful, almost balletic. It's quite balletic. This kind of, the way his body curves, his arms come out, the hair lifts up. Even the mouth is just in this process of opening as though he's just starting to call out. I also like the fact you just got the ramp in the background there. So I'm guessing either he comes down here and jumps. I'm guessing he comes along and then leaps up the ramp and then onto here, and somewhere that's probably where the skateboard has gone off. So you've got the lovely pattern in the marble kind of tiles as well, and it's just, yeah, it's a beautiful example of movement, actual movement in it, but also anticipation of movement as well, and beautiful lines. So yeah, this really is a lovely one, this one, Robert. A delight to see again. So yeah, thank you very much for sending that one in. Viji says, whoa, Robert, what a shot. Susan says, fabulous image, Robert. I think you should have a go at the triptych. And it could be quite fun, actually, 3 cinematic ones. If you've got a kind of before, maybe that one as a midpoint, and an after. Or it could be interesting anyway, depending on the shots you've got. Certainly worth playing with. Right, where are we next? Oh, well, April's disappeared. Maybe I should have put April on a little bit earlier, actually, because April is up next. And April decided to, rather like Nadia is down at the beach. But April's one is quite different again, because this one we have, obviously the weather's different. There's sun on it. It's not one of those big dramatic waves going up. It's more that kind, but it is still, yeah, if you were paddling, you would you would get wet. And she's got a seagull coming out of the wave as well. So April says, this is my photo for capturing movement. A seagull was flying away from a wave, and you can see the water droplets surrounding the seagull. The waves also have water dancing in the air. And yes, again, it's that frozen moment where you've got all the splash coming on, you've got the frozen bird sitting there, but also I have to say I love this little bit of curve as the wave comes over and you've got the shadow underneath where the water's coming over, and all the sunlight that's hitting the top and the frost and the spray and everything else is then hidden, is created this little shaded compartment, a small cave almost. But of course that only exists for a fraction of a second in reality, but it's that moment caught in time, that capturing movement. So very nicely done there, April. Robert says, thank you, I will try a triptych soon. I call the photo Botticelli lost his skateboard. It does have that kind of thing. It does look like a Botticelli model. It's true, yes. Susan says, perfect positioning of the seagull, April. Viji says, beautiful capture of the seagull and the waves. John also thinks a triptych would be great for Robert to have a go at. Okay, so next up we have Janet. Now, if you remember with Janet, Janet has been having a go at doing panning on and off. We were talking about this, was it last week or the week before? Probably the week before. And that notion of when, as things are moving, you try and move your camera with it, and on a slightly slower speed. So if you think of like Nick's one coming down with the person coming down the elevator, that what you would do with that is, rather than keeping the camera still and allowing the movement to happen in front of you, you would follow the movement. And if you got it absolutely right, the person would kind of stay in focus and all the background around them will become blurred. But it is extraordinarily difficult to do. The hit rate is incredibly low, and it requires a lot of practice again and again and again, because you're doing a handheld slow shutter speed camera, so everything tends to go out of focus very, very easily. So with all that in mind, Janet keeps going back to this, and she managed to get where are we, this photo of cyclists. And cyclists tend to be quite a good one to practice on, especially if you have some kind of bike race going on that you can go to. And Janet said, my attempts to get a new image for this challenge were not successful. So Janet was out there trying to give it a go, but couldn't do it. So I have chosen an old image from some local weekly bike races. Well, if you're in a place where you've got weekly bike races, it does give you more opportunity to keep practicing at this. I've experimented with panning, with freezing the action and using every lens I own at different times. And that's what you call commitment. And I love that. And I think it's part of, it's that obsession that we have with photography. And we keep going for it. We keep going at it. We're kind of, you know, one way or another, we're gonna get there in the end. And I think it's the difference between us, as in people who are passionate about photography, and, well, it's about the difference between obsessed photographers and people who are just casual photographers. If you just occasionally pull out your camera, take a quick shot of something, and, well, maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, you thought you were lucky, you were unlucky, but you didn't bother having another go, that's a different kind of thing. But when you get to that point of obsession, where if it didn't work, you kind of want to keep going back to it, you want to have another go, you want to try and master it, that's the level that we're at. Certainly it's the level I'm at, and I'm kind of guessing it's the level you're at, otherwise you probably wouldn't be watching these podcasts. Unless you are kind of being forced into it because, you know, you're the wife of the photographer who's being told, can you keep an eye on it just in case anything goes wrong and I don't know about it. I love you, Maggie. So anyway, back to Janet's obsession, continually going back to the capturing movement. And this is not a bad one at all. And this is where you know, slightly out of focus, but mostly in focus. Here we can actually make out the writing on the cyclist shirt. But you look at all the cyclists around him and you've got much more of that sense of movement blur. And it's really quite impressive. Also, notice the use of the diagonal, that notion of, if it wasn't movement, the person couldn't be sitting in the air at that particular angle. It would just, they would fall over. And this is what I mean about that notion of diagonals. So I've talked several times, or many times, but they've even devoted 2 or 3 podcasts over the years specifically to the use of diagonals as a tool for implying energy. Because when you see something at a diagonal, you're waiting for it to fall over. So it creates an anticipation of movement. So when you include that into your picture, it ramps up the dynamism of it. So nice one there, Janet. And I think your determination to keep going with that is excellent. What else have we got here? So, Marilyn says, wonderful shot, Janet. Nadia says, great shot, Janet. Viji says, beautiful, Janet. Your hard work got rewarded with this shot. Susan says, well done, Janet. I've tried this too, but without much success. And Maggie says, always here. Oh, you've commented, Maggie. I'll have to give you 5 smug points. Right, okay. Next up then, we're going to go to Meg. Meg was absolutely determined to have a go at doing the movement challenge, but she had some fantastic ideas, but wasn't quite so easy to sort of pull off. But yesterday, worked, and Meg decided to have a go at water pouring into a cup from the sink tap. And this is fun. So, I mean, the water coming out of the tap, an absolute, there you go. You've got the movement. And this is Meg's one of Meg's favourite mugs, her flamingo mug. So it's just sitting in the in the wash basin, and tap pouring into it, and all the water kind of flowing out. And there's a real sense of, we've got it's aerating, it's bouncing, it's full of movement. Meg's just using a phone for this, and it's a really nice kind of energy. You can practically hear the water hitting, pushing into the cup and forcing the water out. You can kind of feel the little slight splashes on your face or your hands as you're kind of near it. We know what that whole feels like in the washing up basin. So yeah, nice one there, Meg. A nice bit of fun. And I like, in the dark blue basin, that tiny little patch of pink there with the flamingos, I think works quite well. So yeah, nice one. Thanks for getting that one sorted out. Marilyn says, very creative, Meg. Viji says, wow, Meg. Nadia says, lovely one, Meg. And Susan says, you certainly got movement there, Meg. Great shot. Okay, right. So on to the last one that I'm going to talk about now, and then I will tell you all what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. Oh, John says, genius, Meg, as well. So what I want to deal with now is, I'm just looking at this, right. The picture on my screen seems to look like it's frozen. I'm hoping it hasn't frozen. I'm hoping this is just part of the studio. If it has frozen, somebody type and let me know. Meg says, thank you very much for your lovely comments. I'm assuming the fact that nobody's saying you frozen, Kim, means that it's just the feedback screen and not me. Right, so I will carry on unless somebody tells me otherwise. So what we're going to talk about now is Viji. And Viji says, this is one of those challenges that I just couldn't do justice. But I tried, capturing almost 2,300 shots. Now, if you want to talk about dedication, that is just mind-blowing. And I'm talking about that notion of obsession. Viji has it as much as the rest of us. That let's have a go at this and let's keep going until I get something, or I learned something from not getting it, which I think is also a really important aspect of photography. As I've said many times before with photography, that photography is, for each of the images you get, when your image works, that's great, but you don't necessarily learn from it. What you learn from is all the photos that didn't work. Okay, every time you go click and it doesn't work, you then have to try and work something else out. You have to try something else out, and then if that doesn't work, you try something else out, and you try something else out. You change the settings on your camera, you change the angle, you change the lighting, you keep going. And even if you end up feeling defeated and you stop there, part of your brain is going to keep coming back to it. So to get to 2,300 shots on this idea, I think is just phenomenal. Some people might go utter madness. I go, wow, respect. So what was the photo that Viji spent so long trying to get? And basically she said, I checked out some interesting shots on the internet and I tried replicating, but I felt exasperated at the end. And can you believe me when I said I forgot to use a speed light? Because this is what she was capturing. She was dropping a strawberry into a glass of what I assume is a strawberry flavoured milk. You taught me the basics and I thought I'd mastered it, but when I got to take the water droplet, I got so frustrated and took the photos without a flash. So this is where you're going to have a major problem. To be honest, any of these kind of dropping things into water, but this was one photo, and I will just show you. This was another photo which she did, where you can see the strawberries gone in. We've got the splashes coming out, and we can see it's sort of there. It's not completely there, and that's really because that's coming down to the not having it. If you're going to try and absolutely freeze that moment, you've got to have a really fast shutter speed, and yeah, so or rather it's actually kind of the other way round. You don't work, well, you can, if you've got enough light, you work with a super fast shutter speed. Or what you do is you work with a slightly slower shutter speed, but what you have is a super fast flash. So instead of having the flash on full, you have your flash on a much lower power, where it goes, and it's much quicker, and it freezes the moment much more. Anyway, there's a whole kind of, you have to go onto YouTube and find the bits about how to do that properly. But yes, primarily using a flash or being in a place of strong sunlight is about your only possibility of truly being able to capture it. However, Viji goes on. The images were out of focus, but I see that, but I feel that these were much more important lessons, and I will start watching videos and start again, back to that obsession and not letting go. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I've attached a couple of the photos, the best ones of the lot, but still not in focus. I remember when Jackie used to take such photos so precisely with so much clarity, but I will not stop at this challenge, and we'll carry on working on it. But of the strawberry just almost hitting the milk was her favourite, and I think there is something lovely about that as well. It's difficult. I mean, it could be just resting on the glass, but as we know that Viji was doing it, we know then that's just the moment just before it hit. But trying to get that depth, because that's the other thing really. If you're sort of trying to get a splash shot, you have to allow a slightly deeper depth of field, which means you've got to go for a slightly narrower aperture, which means the light, getting more light in, becomes even more important with that. But she also did another one. I have another photo attached here, which had the promise, but was brutally cut at the top. And here we can see, it's gone splash, got this lovely kind of frozen bit here. But yes, we've lost the bit at the top, which is shame. Looks like you've got something in the background there as well. kind of catching it. So yeah, arranging your background, arranging everything else is one of those things. It's a multiply difficult thing to try and catch these sort of dropping fruit into stuff photos. But I admire your tenacity with it. Where we go. And I operated the camera in my mobile, and I used burst shots. Not sure how it got cut, but one of the flop shots. But fun there, Viji, and I think this shows us what you were kind of after, and actually that is fun where you've kind of caught the strawberry in the moment. So a lot of really interesting photos there, a lot of again, whether it's Janet with the bikes or Viji with the strawberry. And I love this idea that you're out there giving this a go, really trying it, stretching yourselves. Because again, why do you watch the podcast unless you're interested in growing your photography, growing your understanding of it, to understand, finding things that you can go and try yourself, improving the way you can do things, but also a chance of something new. And the great thing about these challenges is you get to see what everybody else is doing, and you go, oh, well, maybe I could have a go at doing my version of that as well. And it's not about copying, because you can't copy. I mean, what's going to happen is if any of the rest of you have a go at dropping a strawberry into a glass of milk, you'll have an entirely different kind of shot. If any of you try photographing a waterfall, you'll have an entirely different shot. If you try photographing a wave, you'll have an entirely different shot. What happens is it becomes you and your interpretation under your set of circumstances that then creates a shot that is unique to you. It's your shot. And I don't think you have to worry about copying as such, or sort of say, oh, somebody else has done that, because there isn't a thing on the earth that somebody else hasn't had a go at doing. What it's about is creating your interpretation of what it is that's in front of you, or what you've set up to photograph. So absolutely, just take a look at what everybody else has done and try and do your version of it and have the fun doing it and learn and you can't help but learn in the process. You only stop learning when you give up. Right, okay, so a couple more comments. Okay, a couple of people saying that I wasn't frozen on screen. That's good. I assumed I probably wasn't, but it's just one of the feedback things in the YouTube studio has got me frozen on the screen, which is the bit that panicked me for a moment. Meg says, thank you very much for your lovely comments everywhere. Oh yeah, we had that. So Robert says, Viji, I know the feeling. I've taken that many photos of a subject to get one shot that's only 70% of the idea I was going for. And Viji, is sympathetic for that. John also says, kudos for the effort on a difficult shot. Susan says, Viji, you're amazing, but these are great shots. Shame about the speed light, but you did at least learn from that. And so Viji says, yes, lots of learning. It was messy too. That is one of those other things about splash shots. You also learn just how much plastic you've got to lay down around if you want to capture things. Yes, as Susan says, that's going to be one big mess to clear up. Right, okay, so brilliant set of photos. Thank you to everybody for taking time to send something in. So 10 smug points for everybody who sent something in, and an extra 5 smug points for everybody who's left a comment today. So I now have to think about how I dish out the smug points. So the bonus smug points then. And so my top place, first place, it has to go to Robert. I love that. There's so much about that picture that I absolutely adore. It's just the cinematic, as you say, kind of, almost Botticelli, that is a Renaissance kind of, feel to the painting of it, the sense of movement, the sense of anticipation, the balletic quality to it. It's a stunning photo. So Robert gets the bonus 30 smug points for that. Second up, I think it's Marilyn's waterfall. So actually, let's just throw these up just as a quick reminder then. So yes, this one, Robert's shot. That one absolutely gets it for me. So my second place, where are we? There, here is, yes, Marilyn's waterfall. Again, it's incredibly, it's very well composed. You have that whole sense of a line, a movement moving through it. We've got the golden light hitting the tips of the trees, and then we've got the duller area where it comes down into but the water being much lighter because of the long exposure. The white into the shaded part creates that contrast of tone. We've got the zigzag coming down, we've got the creaminess to it. It again kind of captures everything you really want in that sense of you're really getting movement, and it's, you know, good stuff there. Third up, I think there's a tricky one. There's everybody's kind of got something in with these photos, but you're all getting your 10 points. But I think my third place is going to go to Nick. Again, there's an originality to this. There's a sense of that. I really like the way this has gone. I like the way the person is on the escalator. It's become this smudged through time across the lens. It's the whole thing being out of focus in a way breaks lots of rules. Not that there are any rules as such as guidelines, but it kind of goes against convention on several levels, and yet still works. And it's the yet still works bit that becomes really important. I hear so many photographers go, hey, yeah, I'm not afraid to break the rules. But yeah, if you if you end up with a terrible photo, what was the point? It's not about that. There are rules, there are guidelines, there are ideas, there are things that work with photography. And there are things where if you're struggling and you can't get, and then understanding these different guidelines gives you solutions to how to get the photo that you might want to get. But every now and again you can kind of step sideways and you end up with something just that little bit different. And I really like this one. So bonus points to Nick there. And I do have to say, actually, at this point, that I'm going to give an extra 10 points to Viji for this one, just for the sheer tenacity for 2,300 photos, having a go and just not giving up, and still talking about she's going to go back and have another go at it. And that's just so brilliant that I'll give you an extra bonus 10 points to Viji for that. So, yes, thank you very much to everybody who has entered that, and congratulations to Robert, Marilyn, Nick and to Viji for extra bonus points there. So, comments here. Yes, Viji says, congrats Robert, you deserve first place, stunning capture. Nick says, well done Robert. Viji says, congrats Marilyn, your shot is of wallpaper quality. Nadia says, well done to all the winners. Likewise to Susan, Nick's, and everybody sort of saying congratulations to everyone. Which is always lovely. And Marilyn says, love all the shots. Viji, you're brave to try all that. So yes, thank you very much to everybody who sent in. So now, just before you run off, next week, clocks change. So, like I say, if you're in North America, we realign to the way that we generally are for most of the year. And in India, I think we shift an hour closer to, so it becomes 7:30 instead of 8:30 or something like that, 8:30 instead of 7:30, whichever way round. It's also in the UK, for anybody who's forgotten, it's Mother's Day next Sunday as well. So as I saw somewhere, that what an awful combination of the fact that Mother's Day you get 1 hour less sleep. That seems a bit of a kick in the pants to all mothers, or for Mother's Day on that one, not thought through properly. What else are we going to have? So yes, next week then we're going to have a feedback session. Okay, so if you would like to get some genuine feedback on one of your photos, stick your image into, where are we? Either the Facebook group or the Flickr group, or email me, kim@kimayres.co.uk. Send me your image, tell me what your sticking point is, and I will do my best to help you. Remember that getting feedback on your own actual photo is one of the best ways you can really learn. We've all got sticking points, we've all got blind spots, we've all got bits where we're looking at something and it just isn't working. And this is your opportunity to get genuine feedback on your photo from a professional photographer. And on top of that, you get a bonus 25 Smug Points if you send me anything as well, because this is a real part of the contribution. The Smug Points are all built around this idea of how much you are contributing to the podcasts. And if you're putting stuff in for feedback, I give you the feedback, you learn from it, but so does everybody else. It's not an entirely selfish process. When I can go through and deconstruct somebody else's photo, then everybody else who's watching learns something too. So it's not just about you, you get to help everybody else as well by sending in your photo. So please make sure you do. I have room for about 4 slots in total. I can't remember whether somebody's already sent me something already, so it might be down to 3, but get your images in as soon as possible. And then in 2 weeks' time, I just only realised this yesterday, we are hitting the 5th anniversary of these podcasts. These podcasts are going to be 5 years old, which is somewhat mind-blowing to me. I never thought in 1,000 years that I might actually still be going after 5 years with these podcasts. So, I've still got to work out quite what I do about this, whether I might do some kind of Smug Awards kind of special, but if anybody's got any ideas, email them to me. Let me know, message me, because it'd be quite nice to do something a little bit special to celebrate 5 years, but I'm slightly mind blank at the moment. But if you've got any ideas, let me know. Right, yes, and just a little reminder that if you'd like to support these podcasts, buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can do it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, invite your friends, all that kind of thing. And look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.